I watched in stunned silence as my mother-in-law, Dorothy, handed shiny new iPhone 16 Pro Max boxes to every grandchild at the family Christmas gathering, except for my daughter, Emma. When Emma asked why she did not receive one, Dorothy coldly declared that Emma was not really part of the family because her bloodline was different. The room fell silent as I felt my heart shatter, watching my 10-year-old daughter's face crumble with confusion and hurt, while my husband David just stood there, saying nothing, avoiding eye contact with both of us completely. The silence that followed Dorothy's cruel declaration felt like an eternity. Emma's cousins clutched their expensive new phones, suddenly uncomfortable as they witnessed their grandmother's blatant favoritism. My daughter stood frozen, her small hands trembling at her sides, tears threatening to spill from her wide brown eyes. I knelt beside Emma, wrapping my arms around her tiny shoulders. "Go upstairs to your room, sweetheart. I'll be right there," I whispered, my voice barely steady. She nodded wordlessly and rushed from the living room, leaving behind the cheerful holiday decorations that now felt mockingly bright. After Emma disappeared up the staircase, I turned to face my husband. "David, we need to talk, now." He finally met my gaze, guilt written across his features. "Ida, let's not make a scene." "A scene?" My voice rose despite my efforts to remain calm. "Your mother just humiliated our daughter in front of the entire family, and you stood there like a statue." Dorothy smoothed her silver hair with false composure. "Emma needed to learn that actions have consequences. I won't reward entitled behavior." Entitled behavior. I stepped closer to my mother-in-law, fury building in my chest. "What exactly has my 10-year-old daughter done to deserve this treatment?" "She knows what she did," Dorothy replied curtly, then busied herself collecting wrapping paper as if the conversation was over. Later that evening, after the relatives had departed with their awkward goodbyes, David and I retreated to our bedroom. Emma had fallen asleep, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit, exhausted from crying. The house felt heavy with unspoken tension. "This wasn't the first time, was it?" I asked, sitting on the edge of our bed. David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his tell when he was preparing to confess something difficult. "No, it wasn't." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Mom has been excluding Emma from things for years, Ida. She never invites Emma to cousin sleepovers. When she takes the other kids to amusement parks or movies, Emma somehow never gets included. Last summer's family camping trip, she told me there wasn't enough space in the cabin, but then I found out she booked a larger one that could have easily accommodated Emma." I stared at my husband in disbelief. "And you never told me—" "I thought I could handle it quietly. I didn't want to create conflict between you and Mom." "Create conflict?" I stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "David, she's been emotionally abusing our child, and you've been covering for her." "I tried to make up for it," he said defensively. "Remember Emma's birthday when she got that expensive art set supposedly from Grandma Dorothy? I bought that. And the designer backpack for school. Also me trying to make Emma feel included." The pieces began falling into place. I recalled numerous occasions when Emma had seemed disappointed after family gatherings, moments when she'd ask why Grandma Dorothy seemed different with her than with her cousins. I'd attributed it to childhood sensitivity, never imagining deliberate exclusion. "There's something else," David continued reluctantly. "Last month, when you were working that double shift at the hospital, Mom made a comment about Emma. She said that adopted children often have behavioral issues and that we shouldn't be surprised if Emma develops problems later." My hands clenched into fists. "She said what?" I defended Emma, of course. I told Mom that Emma is legally and emotionally our daughter in every way that matters. But she just gave me this look like she knew something I didn't. I sank back onto the bed, processing this revelation. Emma had joined our family when she was 6 months old through a private adoption. Her birth mother, a teenage girl from our church, had chosen us specifically because she wanted her baby raised in a stable, loving home. The adoption had been finalized before Emma's first birthday, making her legally our daughter, with all the rights and protections that entailed. Your mother has had 4 years to accept Emma as part of this family, I said slowly. Instead, she's been systematically excluding and emotionally damaging our child. Before David could respond, we heard a soft knock on our bedroom door. "Mommy, Daddy, I can't sleep." Emma appeared in the doorway, wearing her favorite unicorn pajamas, her face still puffy from earlier tears. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" "Of course, baby Baneki," I said, lifting the covers so she could crawl between David and me. As Emma settled against my side, I caught David's eye over her head. We both knew this conversation was far from over. The next morning brought an unexpected discovery. While searching through our home office filing cabinet for Emma's adoption papers to review her legal status, I noticed several official-looking envelopes that had been opened and hastily resealed. Upon closer examination, I realized these were pieces of mail addressed to David and me that Dorothy must have intercepted. Among the documents was a letter from our mortgage company regarding our house refinancing application, dated 3 weeks earlier. The letter indicated that our application had been denied due to conflicting information about property ownership and requested immediate clarification. David and I had never received this letter. My hands shook as I rifled through more intercepted mail. There were bank statements, insurance documents, and correspondence from our county tax assessor's office. Dorothy had been opening and hiding our personal mail for months, possibly longer. "David," I called, my voice tight with growing alarm, "come here right now." When he saw the opened envelope spread across the desk, his face went pale. "Oh no. Oh God, what has she done?" "Your mother has been intercepting our mail," I said, holding up the mortgage letter. "According to this, our refinancing was denied because of property ownership issues. When did you last speak with the bank about our application?" 2 months ago. They said everything was processing normally and we'd hear back soon." David picked up one of the bank statements. "Why would Mom be opening our mail?" A chill ran down my spine as a terrible possibility occurred to me. "David, when you put the house temporarily in your mother's name for the tax benefit, did you get it transferred back to?" The color drained completely from his face. "I thought she handled all the paperwork. She said she'd take care of everything." As the full implications of what we discovered began to sink in, I realized that Dorothy's cruel treatment of Emma was only the beginning. My mother-in-law had been manipulating our family in ways we were just starting to understand. The Monday morning after our discovery, I took a personal day from the hospital to investigate the extent of Dorothy's interference in our lives. David called in sick to his engineering firm, and we dropped Emma off at school with promises that we'd discuss everything age-appropriately once we understood the full situation. Our first stop was the county recorder's office to check the current ownership status of our home. The clerk, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, pulled up our property records and frowned at her computer screen. "According to our records, this property is owned by Dorothy Mae Thompson," she said, rotating the monitor so we could see. "The deed was transferred 18 months ago with both owners' signatures." David leaned forward, studying the document. "That's impossible. I never signed anything transferring full ownership to my mother." Sarah printed copies of the deed transfer documents. When she handed them to us, I examined the signatures closely. David's signature appeared genuine, but the circumstances surrounding when he'd signed were now suspicious. "Do you remember signing this specific document?" I asked David as we sat in the parking lot outside the recorder's office. He stared at the paperwork, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Mom brought me a stack of papers last year around tax season. She said they were temporary forms to help us qualify for a property tax reduction because of her age and income status." I signed everything she put in front of me because I trusted her. She lied to you, I said bluntly, and now she legally owns our house. Our next stop was the bank where we'd applied for refinancing. The loan officer, Marcus Williams, reviewed our file and confirmed our worst fears. The application was denied because the property ownership doesn't match the applicant information, Marcus explained. You applied as property owners, but our title search shows Dorothy Thompson as the sole owner. We sent notification of the denial but never heard back from you. We never received that notification, I said. We believe Dorothy Thompson has been intercepting our mail. Marcus's expression grew serious. That's a federal crime if proven. I'd recommend filing a police report immediately. Additionally, if she fraudulently obtained property ownership, you have legal recourse. David slouched in his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. How could I have been so stupid? You trusted your mother, Marcus replied kindly. Unfortunately, elder financial abuse often involves family members taking advantage of that trust. When we returned home, Dorothy was in the kitchen preparing lunch as if nothing had happened. She looked up cheerfully as we entered. How was your morning, dear? She asked David. I made your favorite soup. We need to talk, Mom, David said, his voice strained, about the house. Dorothy's smile faltered slightly. What about the house? You own it, I stated directly. You transferred the deed into your name without telling us the full truth about what those papers were. I did what was best for this family, Dorothy replied, stirring the soup with deliberate calm. Property taxes were becoming expensive, and my senior citizen discount helps everyone save money. But you're the legal owner now, David pressed. We can't refinance, we can't sell, we can't make any financial decisions about our own home. Dorothy set down her wooden spoon and turned to face us. Perhaps it's time you both learned some financial responsibility. David, you've always been careless with money just like your father, and Ida nurses don't exactly make enough to support a family properly. The insult stung, but I pushed forward. We also know you've been opening our mail. I live here too, Dorothy said dismissively. Sometimes I accidentally open letters that look important. Accidentally? I reached into my purse and pulled out the stack of intercepted mail. You opened our mortgage correspondence bank statements and insurance documents. That's mail tampering, which is a federal offense. For the first time, Dorothy's composure cracked. You have no proof of intentional wrongdoing. The proof is right here, David said, holding up the refinancing denial letter. We never saw this because you hid it from us. Dorothy crossed her arms defensively. I was protecting you from bad news during the holidays. Protecting us. My voice rose. You sabotaged our financial planning and lied about property ownership. How is that protection? I think you should both calm down, Dorothy said coolly. You're overreacting to a simple family misunderstanding. That afternoon, while Dorothy was at her weekly bridge club, David and I decided to search through her belongings for additional evidence of financial manipulation. We felt uncomfortable invading her privacy, but the magnitude of what we discovered justified our actions. In Dorothy's bedroom, tucked inside a decorative box on her dresser, we found a collection of documents that made our situation far worse than we'd imagined. There were bank statements for accounts we didn't know existed, showing regular deposits that appeared to come from our property tax payments. She had been redirecting our tax payments into her personal accounts for over a year. More disturbing were the documents related to Emma's college savings fund. Dorothy had convinced David to set up the account with her as a co-signer for estate planning purposes. Bank statements showed she'd been making withdrawals from Emma's college fund and using the money for expensive purchases, including the iPhone 16 Pro Max devices she'd given to the other grandchildren. She stole from Emma's future, I whispered, staring at the withdrawal records. David sat heavily on Dorothy's bed, holding his head in his hands. $12,000. She took $12,000 from Emma's college fund. At the bottom of the box we discovered something even more shocking: a recording device. It was a small digital recorder that Dorothy had apparently been using to secretly tape our private conversations. The device contained dozens of audio files labeled with dates going back several months. I played one file at random and heard my own voice discussing my concerns about Emma's emotional development after family gatherings. In the recording, I mentioned feeling frustrated with Dorothy's favoritism and wondering whether we should limit Emma's exposure to such treatment. "She's been spying on us," I said, feeling physically sick, recording our private conversations in our own home. David stood abruptly and began pacing the small room. "Why would she record us?" Before I could answer, we heard the front door open downstairs. Dorothy had returned early from bridge club. "David, Ida, are you home?" her voice called from the entryway. We quickly returned the documents to the box and hurried downstairs, trying to appear normal. Dorothy stood in the living room holding several shopping bags. "I stopped by the electronics store after bridge," she announced happily. "I thought Emma might like a new tablet for her schoolwork." She pulled out an expensive iPad, still in its packaging. "I know yesterday was difficult, but I want Emma to understand that good behavior is rewarded." The hypocrisy was staggering. Dorothy was offering Emma an expensive gift, purchased with money stolen from Emma's own college fund, while simultaneously recording our private conversations and maintaining legal control over our home. "That's very generous, Mom," David said carefully, "but we need to continue our conversation from this morning." Dorothy's expression hardened. "I thought we resolved that situation." "We didn't resolve anything," I interjected. "We discovered that you've been taking money from Emma's college account." Dorothy set the iPad on the coffee table with deliberate precision. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "We found the bank statements," David said quietly. "You've withdrawn thousands of dollars from Emma's education fund. As a co-signer on that account, I have every legal right to make withdrawals," Dorothy replied without missing a beat. "Perhaps if you managed your finances better, Emma wouldn't need my help funding her future." The audacity of her response left me momentarily speechless. She had stolen from her own granddaughter and was now claiming it was for Emma's benefit. "You bought gifts for other grandchildren using Emma's college money," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Then you excluded Emma from receiving those same gifts. You literally made her pay for her own exclusion." Dorothy picked up her shopping bags and headed toward the staircase. "I think you're both being dramatic and ungrateful. I've done nothing but help this family." As she climbed the stairs to her room, David and I exchanged looks of complete bewilderment. Dorothy genuinely seemed to believe her own lies, or she was an even more skilled manipulator than we'd realized. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, David's brother Michael called unexpectedly. "David, I need to ask you something," Michael said, his tone serious. "Has Mom been acting strange lately?" "Strange?" how David asked, putting the call on speaker so I could listen. "Patricia and I received a weird phone call from her yesterday. She was asking detailed questions about our mortgage, our insurance policies, and whether we'd updated our estate planning recently. When we asked why she needed to know, she got defensive and said she was just concerned about family financial security." David and I looked at each other with growing alarm. "There's something else," Michael continued. "Mom asked if we'd be willing to put our house temporarily in her name for tax purposes. She said she'd helped you guys with the same thing and saved you thousands of dollars." "Michael," David said slowly, "whatever you do, don't sign any papers Mom brings you. We need to talk in person as soon as possible." After ending the call, David turned to me with a stricken expression. "She's been planning to do the same thing to Michael and Patricia." As we prepared for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface of Dorothy's deception. The recording device suggested a level of premeditation that went far beyond opportunistic financial manipulation. "David," I said as we turned off the bedroom lights, What if your mother has been planning something bigger than just stealing from us? Gis said. What do you mean? The recordings, the property, transferred the systematic exclusion of Emma from family activities. What if she's building a case for something? David was quiet for a long moment. A case for what? I don't know yet, I admitted, but I have a terrible feeling we're about to find out. The next morning brought a devastating phone call from our attorney, Janet Richardson, whom we'd contacted after discovering the extent of Dorothy's financial manipulation. Her voice was grave as she delivered news that would change everything. I've reviewed the property deed documents you brought me, Janet said, and I have to tell you that legally, Dorothy Thompson is the legitimate owner of your house. The deed transfer was properly notarized and filed with the county. Even though David was misled about the nature of the documents he signed, his signature is legally valid. I sank into a kitchen chair, feeling the floor drop out from under our world. So we have no legal claim to our own home. Not as the deed currently stands, Janet confirmed. However, you may have grounds for a fraud case if you can prove Dorothy intentionally misrepresented the documents. The challenge is that fraud cases involving family members are complex and expensive to litigate. David took the phone from me. What are our options? You could file a civil lawsuit claiming fraud and seeking restoration of property ownership. But given Dorothy's age and the family relationship, a judge might be sympathetic to her claims of trying to help with taxes. You'd need substantial evidence of deliberate deception and financial harm. After hanging up, David and I sat in stunned silence. Emma would be home from school in a few hours, and we had no idea how to explain that we might lose our house. Our conversation was interrupted by a knock at the front door. Through the window, I saw a man in a uniform holding an official-looking envelope. David Thompson, the man asked when David opened the door. Yes. You've been served with a restraining order filed by Dorothy Mae Thompson. You'll need to appear in court next week. I read over David's shoulder as he opened the envelope. Dorothy was claiming that I had been harassing and threatening her, creating an unsafe living environment. The restraining order prohibited me from approaching within 50 feet of Dorothy and granted her exclusive use of the common areas in our house. She's claiming I threatened her, I said in disbelief. When? David scanned the document. She says you made verbal threats on multiple occasions and that she fears for her physical safety. This is insane, I muttered. She's turning herself into the victim. An hour later, Dorothy returned from her afternoon errands and found us sitting at the kitchen table with the legal papers spread before us. I see you received my court filing, she said calmly, setting down her purse. Mom, what are you doing? David asked, his voice pained. I'm protecting myself from an increasingly hostile environment, Dorothy replied. Ida has been verbally aggressive toward me ever since the Christmas incident. I have the right to feel safe in my own home. Your home. I stood abruptly. This was our home until you stole it from us. Dorothy pulled out her phone. See, this is exactly the kind of threatening behavior I documented in my restraining order request. Documented. David frowned. What kind of documentation? I've been keeping detailed records of Ida's behavior patterns, Dorothy said matter-of-factly. Dates, times, specific threats she's made. I also have audio recordings of her making disparaging comments about me and expressing hostility toward my relationship with the family. My blood ran cold as I realized Dorothy had been using the recording device we discovered as evidence against me in court. You've been secretly recording us, I said. That's illegal. I was protecting myself by gathering evidence of verbal abuse, Dorothy countered. Any reasonable person would document threats made against them. That afternoon, while Dorothy was out, David called Michael to update him on the legal situation. Michael's wife, Patricia, answered the phone, and her first words sent chills through both of us. Thank God you called, Patricia said urgently. Your mother showed up at our house this morning with a real estate agent. A what? David put the call on speaker. She brought this woman named Carol, who said she was conducting a market evaluation of our property for insurance purposes. They spent an hour measuring rooms and taking photographs. When I asked Dorothy about it, she said she was helping us maximize our homeowner's insurance coverage. Michael came on the line. David, something's not right. After they left, I called our insurance company to ask about market evaluations, and they said they never requested one. They have no record of sending anyone to our property. Why would Mom bring a real estate agent to your house? I asked. That's what we're trying to figure out, Patricia replied, but it gets worse. While they were here, your mother asked really specific questions about our mortgage balance when our loan comes up for renewal and whether we'd considered selling in the current market. David ran his hands through his hair. She's been asking financial questions about everyone in the family. David, Michael said seriously. I think Mom might be planning something bigger than tax fraud. Patricia did some research on the real estate agent Carol Mitchell. She specializes in quick property sales for clients facing financial emergencies. Ken. After ending the call, David and I looked at each other with growing dread. She's planning to sell our house, I said. But why would she need to sell quickly? David wondered aloud. The answer came 2 days later when Emma's school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called requesting a meeting. Emma has been exhibiting some concerning behavioral changes, Mrs. Patterson explained when we arrived at the school. She's become withdrawn in class, her grades have dropped, and yesterday she told her teacher that her family might be moving soon because of money problems. David and I exchanged glances. We hadn't told Emma about any of our financial issues. Did Emma say where she heard about money problems? I asked. She mentioned overhearing a phone conversation where someone was talking about debts and needing money quickly, Mrs. Patterson replied. She seemed particularly worried about having to leave her friends in school. That evening, we confronted Dorothy about what Emma had overheard. I have no idea what the child thinks she heard, Dorothy said dismissively. She has an active imagination. Emma specifically mentioned debts, David pressed. Are you in financial trouble, Mom? Dorothy's composure slipped slightly. My financial situation is none of your business. It becomes our business when you're using our house as collateral, I said. I'm not using anything as collateral, Dorothy snapped. You're both paranoid. But her defensive reaction confirmed our suspicions. Dorothy was facing some kind of financial crisis, and our house was somehow part of her solution. The pieces of the puzzle began falling into place when David's sister called from Arizona that weekend. David, I need to warn you about something, his sister Beth said. Mom borrowed $15,000 from me 6 months ago, claiming it was for emergency medical expenses. She said she'd pay me back within 90 days. Did she pay you back? David asked. No, and when I try to discuss it, she changes the subject or gets angry. But here's the weird part last week. She asked if I'd be willing to co-sign on a personal loan for her. When I asked why she needed more money, she hung up on me. David closed his eyes. How much money does she need? She mentioned needing access to about $70,000 to resolve some financial obligations. David, I think Mom might be in serious debt. After Beth's call, we realized that Dorothy's cruel treatment of Emma, the property theft, and the financial manipulation were all connected to a larger financial crisis. She was systematically positioning herself to sell our house to cover debts she'd hidden from the entire family. That night, as we lay in bed, listening to Emma's quiet breathing from the next room, I felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Dorothy had done to our family. We're going to lose everything, aren't we? I whispered to David. I don't know, he replied honestly, but I won't let her destroy Emma's sense of security. What if we can't stop her? David was quiet for a moment. Then we'll figure out a way to start over, but we won't let Dorothy win. As if summoned by our conversation, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Emma appeared in our doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared," she said in a small voice. I lifted the covers so she could climb between us. "What are you scared of, sweetheart?" "I heard Grandma Dorothy talking on the phone earlier," Emma whispered. "She said something about me not belonging here and that you and Daddy would be happier without me." My heart broke as I realized Dorothy had been psychologically manipulating Emma, as well as financially destroying our family. "Emma, look at me," I said, turning her face toward mine. "You belong in this family. You are our daughter, and nothing will ever change that." "But Grandma Dorothy said that adopted kids don't really count as family," Emma replied, tears streaming down her cheeks. David's jaw tightened. "Grandma Dorothy is wrong, Emma. Being adopted doesn't make you less our daughter. It makes you chosen, which means we wanted you specifically." As Emma finally fell asleep between us, I made a silent promise to my daughter. No matter what Dorothy had planned, no matter what legal battles we faced, I would not allow her to destroy Emma's sense of belonging and self-worth. Dorothy might own our house on paper, but this family belonged to us. The restraining order hearing took place the following Thursday morning in a sterile courtroom that smelled of industrial cleaner and anxiety. Dorothy arrived wearing a navy blue dress that made her look frail and grandmotherly, accompanied by an attorney I didn't recognize. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the paperwork while I sat beside my own lawyer, feeling like my entire life was being evaluated by strangers. "Mrs. Thompson," Judge Morrison addressed Dorothy, "you're seeking a restraining order against your daughter-in-law based on claims of verbal threats and harassment. Can you provide specific examples of this behavior?" Dorothy's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client has documented numerous instances of verbal aggression, including recorded evidence of threatening language used by the respondent." I felt my stomach drop as Dorothy's lawyer played selected audio clips from the secret recordings. The clips were carefully edited to make my frustrated comments about Dorothy's behavior sound like threats, while removing all context about her financial manipulation and mistreatment of Emma. In one clip, my voice said clearly, "I won't let her destroy our family." In another, "She needs to understand there will be consequences for this behavior." Taken out of context, my words sounded menacing rather than defensive. Judge Morrison listened impassively, then turned to my attorney. "How does your client respond to these allegations?" Janet Richardson stood confidently. "Your Honor, these recordings were made without my client's knowledge or consent in her own home, which raises serious privacy concerns. Additionally, the audio clips appear to be selectively edited to remove context about ongoing family disputes regarding property ownership and financial abuse." "Objection, Your Honor," Dorothy's attorney interrupted. "The respondent's motivations don't justify threatening behavior toward an elderly woman." Judge Morrison raised her hand for silence. "I'm going to issue a temporary restraining order for 30 days while this matter is investigated further. Mrs. Ida Thompson is prohibited from approaching Dorothy Thompson within 50 feet and must avoid areas of the shared residence where Mrs. Dorothy Thompson is present." As we left the courthouse, I felt humiliated and trapped. The restraining order meant I couldn't effectively confront Dorothy about her ongoing financial schemes, and she knew it. The legal victory emboldened Dorothy to escalate her campaign against our family. Over the next week, she began making phone calls to members of our church congregation, expressing concern about the hostile environment she was facing at home. Pastor Williams called me on Tuesday evening. "Ida, I've received some troubling reports about family difficulties you're experiencing. Dorothy came to speak with me about feeling unsafe in her living situation. I tried to explain the property fraud and financial manipulation, but Dorothy had presented herself as a vulnerable elderly woman being mistreated by an ungrateful daughter-in-law. My attempts to describe her calculated behavior sounded vindictive in comparison to her portrayal of victimhood. Pastor Dorothy has been stealing from my family, Paul, I said. She transferred ownership of our house without our knowledge and has been taking money from my daughter's college fund. Those are serious accusations, Ida Kate, Pastor Williams replied carefully. Have you contacted the authorities about these financial concerns, A? We've spoken with lawyers and are building a case, but it takes time to prove fraud. I understand this is a difficult situation, he said diplomatically. Perhaps family counseling would help resolve these conflicts peacefully. The conversation left me feeling isolated and misunderstood. Dorothy was successfully positioning herself as the victim while portraying me as the aggressor. Her campaign extended beyond our church community. She contacted my colleagues at Regional Medical Center, expressing concern about my emotional stability and its potential impact on patient care. My nursing supervisor, Linda Martinez, called me into her office Friday afternoon. Ida, I need to ask you about some concerning reports I've received regarding your personal situation, Linda said, closing her office door. What kind of reports? I received a phone call from someone claiming to be a family member who said you've been under extreme stress and might be experiencing anger management issues. They suggested this could affect your professional judgment. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and rage. Linda, my mother-in-law, is attempting to destroy my reputation because I discovered she's been committing financial fraud against my family. Linda leaned back in her chair. That's a serious accusation, Ida. It's also true, I replied firmly. She's stolen our house and Emma's college fund. When we confronted her, she filed a false restraining order and is now trying to damage my career. I need you to understand that any personal issues affecting your work performance could result in disciplinary action, Linda warned. I'm not saying I believe these reports, but I have to document that we've discussed them. The threat to my nursing career added another layer of stress to our deteriorating situation. Dorothy wasn't just stealing our financial security, she was systematically attacking every aspect of our lives. Emma began experiencing the social consequences as well. Her best friend Madison's mother, Crystal, called that Saturday morning. Ida, I need to ask you about some things Madison heard at school, Crystal said hesitantly. There are rumors that Emma's family is involved in some kind of legal trouble. My heart sank as I realized Dorothy's campaign was reaching Emma's peer group. What kind of rumors? I asked. Something about police coming to your house and family court hearings. Madison is worried about Emma and asked if she could sleep over here for a few days. Crystal, my daughter's grandmother, has been spreading false information about our family situation, I explained. We're dealing with some legal issues, but they don't involve any danger to Emma. I'm sure you understand that I need to protect Madison, Crystal replied diplomatically. Maybe it would be best if the girls didn't have playdates until things settled down. After ending the call, I found Emma in her room quietly playing with her dolls. Sweetheart, how are things at school? I asked, sitting on her bed. Emma looked up with sad eyes. Some kids are asking weird questions about our family. Tyler asked if we're going to jail. I pulled Emma into my arms, fury building in my chest. Dorothy's vindictive campaign was now targeting an innocent 10-year-old child. Emma, some adults are saying untrue things about our family because they're angry about grown-up problems. None of this is your fault, and you're not in any trouble. Are we going to lose our house? Emma asked quietly. I struggled to answer honestly without terrifying her. We're working hard to solve some problems with the house. Whatever happens, Daddy and I will make sure you're safe and loved. That afternoon, Michael and Patricia arrived unexpectedly with serious expressions. We need to talk, Michael said as they entered our living room. We've been doing research on Mom's financial situation. Patricia pulled out a folder of documents. We hired a private investigator to look into Dorothy's background. What we found is disturbing. She handed us a report showing Dorothy's financial activities over the past 5 years. The investigator had discovered that Dorothy owed substantial amounts to multiple creditors, including credit card companies, personal loan services, and what appeared to be gambling debts. She owes over $80,000, Michael said grimly. The creditors have been pressuring her for months. Gambling debts. David stared at the report in shock. The investigator traced regular payments to online gambling sites and cash advances at several casinos within driving distance, Patricia explained. She's been financing her gambling addiction by borrowing against family assets. The report also revealed that Dorothy had attempted similar property transfer schemes with other family members in different states over the past decade. She had convinced a cousin in Florida to temporarily transfer property ownership for tax purposes, then sold that property to cover gambling losses. She's done this before, I said, feeling sick. Multiple times, Michael confirmed. The investigator found court records from 3 states showing family members who sued Dorothy for property fraud. In each case, she eventually settled out of court and moved to a new location. So our house is just her latest target, David said quietly. It gets worse, Patricia continued. The real estate agent she brought to our house specializes in distressed property sales. She helps people sell quickly when they're facing foreclosure or legal action from creditors. Michael leaned forward. David, we think Mom is planning to sell your house within the next few weeks to cover her gambling debts. As the full scope of Dorothy's deception became clear, I realized we weren't just dealing with family conflict or financial disagreements. We were the targets of a sophisticated long-term fraud scheme perpetrated by someone who had been manipulating families for years. What do we do now? I asked. We fight back, Patricia said firmly, but we need to move quickly before she can complete the property sale. That evening, as we planned our legal strategy, Emma came downstairs for a glass of water before bed. Mommy, she said quietly, I've been thinking about what Grandma Dorothy said at Christmas. What about it, sweetheart? She said I'm not really part of the family because of my bloodline, Emma continued thoughtfully. But you chose me when I was a baby, right? Yes, we did. Emma nodded seriously. So that means I'm part of this family because you wanted me, not because you had to keep me. That makes me more special, not less special. Despite everything Dorothy had put us through, Emma's resilience and wisdom gave me hope that our family would survive this crisis stronger than before. You're absolutely right, Emma, I said, hugging her tightly. You're not just part of this family, you're the heart of this family. As Emma returned to bed, David and I looked at each other with renewed determination. Tomorrow we start fighting back, David said. Tomorrow we protect our daughter and our family, I agreed. Dorothy might have legal ownership of our house, but she had underestimated the strength of the family she was trying to destroy. Monday morning brought a phone call that shattered what remained of our fragile stability. Emma's school secretary, Mrs. Chen, called at 7:45 while we were rushing to get Emma ready for school. Mrs. Thompson, Emma isn't in her homeroom this morning. Did she leave for school on schedule? My blood turned to ice. What do you mean she's not there? We put her on the bus at 7:30 like always. David immediately called the bus company while I drove to Emma's school, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. The bus driver confirmed that Emma had boarded the bus, but gotten off at the second stop, 3 blocks from our house. By the time I returned home, David had contacted the police. Officer Rodriguez arrived within minutes and began taking our statement while Dorothy stood in the living room looking genuinely confused and concerned. When did you last see Emma? Officer Rodriguez asked Dorothy. This morning at breakfast, Dorothy replied. She seemed quiet, but I thought she was just tired. Has Emma ever run away before? The officer asked us. Never, I said emphatically. She's never even talked about running away. Officer Rodriguez organized a neighborhood search while David and I called Emma's friends' parents. No one had seen her, and her closest friend Madison's mother confirmed that Emma hadn't contacted Madison. 3 hours into the search, Patricia found a handwritten note tucked inside Emma's backpack, which had been left in her bedroom. The note, written in Emma's careful, 10-year-old handwriting, read, "Dear Mommy and Daddy, I heard Grandma Dorothy say that you would be happier without me because I cause problems for the family. I don't want you to lose your house because of me. I'm going somewhere safe where I won't cause more trouble. I love you both very much. Love, Emma." Gia. I collapsed into David's arms, sobbing as the full implications of Emma's disappearance hit me. Our daughter believed she was the cause of our family's destruction and had run away to protect us. "This is Dorothy's fault," I said through my tears. "She's been psychologically abusing Emma, making her feel unwanted." Dorothy stood nearby, wringing her hands. "I never told Emma she wasn't wanted. I would never say such a thing." "You told her she wasn't part of the family," David said angrily. "You've been excluding her from everything and making her feel like an outsider." "That's not the same as telling her to run away," Dorothy protested. Officer Rodriguez interrupted our argument. "Right now, our priority is finding Emma safely. Family disputes can be addressed later." The search expanded to include canine units and volunteer groups from our church and neighborhood. Local news stations picked up the story of a missing 10-year-old girl, and Emma's photograph appeared on television screens throughout the region. By late afternoon, I was emotionally and physically exhausted. David and I had walked every street within a 2-mile radius of our house called Emma's name until our voices were hoarse and answered the same questions from multiple police officers. The break we needed came from an unexpected source. Emma's school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called with crucial information. "I've been thinking about Emma's favorite places at school," Mrs. Patterson said. "She often mentions a park near her friend Sophia's house where they like to feed ducks. Have you checked Willowbrook Park?" Sophia lived across town in a neighborhood Emma had visited only twice, but it was secluded enough that she might feel safe there while still being close to familiar people. David and I rushed to Willowbrook Park while police units were dispatched from other directions. The park was larger than I'd expected, with walking trails, a playground, and a small pond surrounded by oak trees. We found Emma sitting on a wooden bench near the duck pond, still wearing her school clothes and clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd slept with since she was 3 years old. "Emma," I called out, running toward her. She looked up with tear-stained cheeks and immediately burst into fresh sobs. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean to cause trouble." I swept her into my arms, holding her tight against my chest, while David wrapped both of us in his embrace. "You didn't cause any trouble, sweetheart," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're not the problem in our family. You never were." "But Grandma Dorothy said the house problem started because you had to spend money on me." Emma hiccuped through her tears. "Grandma Dorothy was wrong," I said firmly. "The house problem started because Grandma Dorothy took something that didn't belong to her. None of this is your fault." As we sat on the bench holding Emma, I called Officer Rodriguez to report that we'd found her safe. Within minutes, the park was filled with police cars, paramedics, and relief workers who wanted to check Emma's physical condition. The paramedic, a kind woman named Jessica, examined Emma for dehydration and exhaustion while asking gentle questions about her emotional state. "Emma, can you tell me why you felt like you needed to leave home?" Jessica asked. "I heard Grandma Dorothy talking on the phone," Emma explained in a small voice. "She said that Mommy and Daddy's problems started when they adopted me, and that real families don't have so much drama." David's jaw clenched. "When did you hear her say this?" "Yesterday night after you guys went to bed. I got up to get water and heard her talking in the kitchen." I looked at David with growing rage. Dorothy had been deliberately sabotaging Emma's sense of security, convincing a 10-year-old child that she was responsible for adult financial problems. The ride home was quiet, except for Emma's occasional sniffles. She sat between David and me in the back seat of Officer Rodriguez's police car, refusing to let go of either of our hands. When we arrived at the house, a crowd of neighbors and family members had gathered in our driveway. Dorothy stood on the front porch looking appropriately concerned, but I noticed she avoided making eye contact with Emma. Child Protective Services caseworker Amanda Foster was waiting inside our house. The police had contacted CPS as a standard procedure when children run away due to family conflicts. "I need to speak with Emma privately to ensure she feels safe in her home environment," Ms. Foster explained professionally. While Emma talked with the caseworker in the living room, David and I waited anxiously in the kitchen. We could hear Emma's clear voice describing the events that led to her running away, including specific quotes from Dorothy's hurtful comments. After 30 minutes, Ms. Foster emerged with a serious expression. "Emma has described a pattern of emotional manipulation and exclusion by her grandmother that directly contributed to her decision to run away," Ms. Foster said. "While I don't see evidence of immediate physical danger, the psychological impact on Emma is concerning." "What does that mean for our family?" David asked. "I'm opening a case file to monitor the situation. Emma will remain in your custody, but I'll be conducting follow-up visits to ensure her emotional safety. I'm also recommending that Dorothy Thompson undergo psychological evaluation regarding her treatment of Emma." Dorothy, who had been listening from the hallway, stepped into the kitchen. "I resent the implication that I've harmed Emma in any way." "Mrs. Thompson," Ms. Foster said directly, "Emma has provided specific examples of comments you made that caused her to feel unwanted and responsible for family problems. A 10-year-old child doesn't develop these feelings without adult influence." "I've always treated Emma with kindness," Dorothy protested. "Excluding a child from family gifts and activities while telling her she's not really part of the family is not kind treatment," Ms. Foster replied firmly. "It's emotional abuse." That evening, after the authorities and neighbors had departed, our family sat together in Emma's bedroom while she told us everything she'd been feeling over the past few months. "I thought maybe if I wasn't here, you and Daddy could fix the house problems without worrying about me too," Emma said, curled up between us on her bed. "Emma, listen to me very carefully," I said, taking her small hands in mine. "You are not a problem that needs to be solved. You are the most important person in this family. Daddy and I would rather lose every house in the world than lose you." "Really?" Emma asked in a small voice. "Really," David confirmed. "Houses can be replaced. You cannot be replaced. You're irreplaceable." As Emma finally fell asleep that night, exhausted from her ordeal, David and I made a decision that would change our family's future forever. "I'm done protecting my mother's feelings," David said quietly. "She almost caused us to lose Emma permanently." "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking it's time Dorothy faced real consequences for what she's done to our family. The police report about Emma's running away creates a paper trail connecting Dorothy's behavior to child endangerment," I realized. "Combined with the financial fraud evidence, we might finally have enough to take real legal action." David nodded. "Tomorrow we stop playing defense and start playing offense." As I lay awake that night listening to Emma's steady breathing, I felt a mixture of gratitude that she was safe and determination that she would never again doubt her place in our family. Dorothy had pushed our family to the breaking point, but she had also revealed the unshakable strength of the bond between David, Emma, and me. She might own our house on paper, but she would never own our family. The war for our family's future was about to begin. The morning after Emma's safe return, I woke with crystal clear purpose for the first time in weeks. While Dorothy slept late upstairs, David and I made phone calls that would fundamentally change our family's situation. Our first call was to FBI agent Sarah Collins, whom we'd contacted through our attorney regarding Dorothy's mail tampering. Agent Collins had been investigating Dorothy's interstate financial activities based on information from Michael's private investigator. Mrs. Thompson, we've been waiting for additional evidence to move forward with federal charges, Agent Collins said during our phone conference. Your daughter's running away, combined with the CPS report documenting psychological abuse, provides the final piece we needed. What kind of charges are you considering? David asked. Mail fraud, wire fraud, elder abuse irony, since she's the elder, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes across state lines. We've also discovered that Dorothy has been using multiple Social Security numbers over the past decade. My heart raced as the implications sank in. Multiple Social Security numbers. Identity fraud, Agent Collins confirmed. She's been collecting benefits under different names while maintaining her primary identity. This is a federal offense that carries significant prison time. Our second call was to Janet Richardson, our attorney who had been building a civil case against Dorothy for property fraud. The federal investigation changes everything, Janet explained. Once Dorothy is arrested on federal charges, we can file an emergency motion to freeze all her assets, including your house. Federal property seizure laws will work in your favor since the house was obtained through fraudulent means. How long will this process take? I asked. Federal cases move quickly when there's substantial evidence. Agent Collins indicated they're ready to make arrests within the next few days. Our third call was to Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a child psychologist recommended by CPS caseworker Amanda Foster. Emma needed professional support to process the emotional trauma Dorothy had inflicted. Children who experience systematic exclusion and psychological manipulation often develop trust issues and feelings of worthlessness. Dr. Martinez explained during our consultation, early intervention is crucial for Emma's long-term emotional health. While David and I worked on legal preparations, Michael and Patricia were conducting their own investigation into Dorothy's activities. They'd been monitoring her phone calls and discovered she was planning to complete the sale of our house within 48 hours. She's been in contact with a cash buyer who specializes in quick property purchases, Patricia reported during an emergency family meeting at Michael's house. The buyer doesn't ask questions about property ownership disputes and can close within 24 hours. That means she could sell the house and disappear with the money before the federal arrest happens, David realized. Michael nodded grimly, unless we can delay the sale somehow. The solution came from an unexpected source. Beth, David's sister from Arizona, called that afternoon with news that Dorothy had contacted her again requesting a large loan. She called this morning asking for $20,000 to cover what she called emergency legal fees, Beth reported. When I asked what kind of legal trouble she was facing, she claimed that you and Ida were trying to steal her property and she needed money to fight you in court. Did you agree to loan her the money? I asked. I told her I needed a few days to arrange that amount, Beth replied. But I also recorded our phone conversation where she explicitly admits to owning your house and planning to sell it quickly to resolve financial obligations. Beth's recording provided additional evidence of Dorothy's fraudulent intentions and bought us time before she could complete the property sale. Wednesday morning brought the confrontation we'd been preparing for. Dorothy was in the kitchen making coffee when federal agents knocked on our front door. Dorothy Mae Thompson, Agent Collins asked when Dorothy answered the door. Yes. You're under arrest for federal mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit financial crimes and identity theft. Dorothy's coffee mug crashed to the floor as Agent Collins read her Miranda rights. David and I stood in the hallway watching as the woman who had terrorized our family for months was handcuffed and led away. This is ridiculous, Dorothy protested as agents escorted her to their vehicle. I'm being persecuted by ungrateful family members. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent, Agent Collins repeated. I suggest you use that right. After Dorothy's arrest, federal agents executed a search warrant on our house collecting documents and evidence related to her financial crimes. They also seized Dorothy's personal belongings, including multiple fake IDs and financial documents showing the scope of her illegal activities. We found evidence that she's been running this type of scam for over 15 years, Agent Collins informed us afterward. She targets family members who trust her, gradually gains control of their assets, then disappears after liquidating everything. The federal seizure of Dorothy's assets included an emergency court order returning legal ownership of our house to David and me. The forged property transfer was declared invalid, and we regained full control of our home within 24 hours of Dorothy's arrest. Emma's reaction to Dorothy's arrest was complex. While she felt relief that the source of family tension was gone, she also struggled with guilt about her grandmother going to jail. "Is Grandma Dorothy in jail because I ran away?" Emma asked during our first session with Dr. Martinez. "Emma, your grandmother is in jail because she chose to commit crimes against your family," Dr. Martinez explained gently. "Running away was your response to feeling unwanted, but the crimes existed before you ever left home." "But if I hadn't run away, would the police have arrested her?" Dr. Martinez looked at me, then back at Emma. "Sometimes children accidentally help adults discover important truths. You help the police understand that your grandmother was hurting your family, but you're not responsible for her choices." Over the following weeks, Emma gradually began to understand that Dorothy's arrest was the consequence of Dorothy's actions, not Emma's victimhood. The community response to Dorothy's arrest was swift and supportive. Pastor Williams called to apologize for not believing our initial reports of Dorothy's manipulation. "I should have listened more carefully when you tried to explain the family situation," Pastor Williams admitted. "Dorothy presented herself very convincingly as a victim." My nursing supervisor, Linda Martinez, also apologized for the disciplinary meeting about my professional conduct. "The federal investigation confirmed that Dorothy was systematically attempting to destroy your reputation and career," Linda said. "I'm placing a commendation in your personnel file for maintaining professional standards while dealing with extraordinary personal stress." Emma's friend Madison's mother, Crystal, called to invite Emma for the sleepover she'd been denied during the crisis. "I should have trusted your family instead of listening to gossip," Crystal said. "Madison has missed Emma terribly." The federal trial moved quickly due to Dorothy's extensive criminal history and the overwhelming evidence against her. Her court-appointed attorney advised her to accept a plea bargain rather than face additional charges that could result in life imprisonment. Dorothy pleaded guilty to 18 federal charges and was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with mandatory restitution to all her victims. The restitution amount included returning Emma's college fund with interest and compensating our family for legal fees and emotional damages. 12 years means she'll be 82 when she's released, David said after the sentencing hearing. "She'll never be able to hurt another family." As part of the restitution agreement, Dorothy was required to provide information about other families she'd victimized over the past 15 years. This led to additional arrests and helped dozens of families recover stolen property and assets. Emma's healing process continued through weekly therapy sessions and family activities focused on rebuilding her sense of security and belonging. "I've been thinking about my adoption story case," Emma said during one of our evening talks. "Grandma Dorothy said adopted kids don't really count, but Dr. Martinez says adoption means being chosen special." "What do you think?" I asked. Emma considered this seriously. "I think being chosen is better than being accidental. You and Daddy picked me specifically, which means you really wanted me." "We did want you," David confirmed. "We still want you. We'll always want you." As autumn arrived, our family had developed new traditions and stronger bonds. We established weekly family meetings where everyone could share feelings and concerns without fear of judgment or manipulation. Emma started a journal where she wrote about her thoughts and experiences, including the difficult memories from the past year. Writing helps me remember that the bad things are over, Emma explained, and it helps me remember all the good things, too. David began individual therapy to address his enabling behaviors and learn to recognize manipulation tactics. I spent so many years making excuses for my mother's behavior, David reflected. I prioritized keeping peace over protecting my wife and daughter. But you chose us when it mattered most, and I reminded him. When Dorothy forced you to pick sides, you picked your family. As Christmas approached our first holiday season, without Dorothy's toxic presence, we created new traditions focused on gratitude, honesty, and unconditional love. Emma helped me plan a special holiday celebration for other families who'd experienced trauma, which became a healing experience for all of us. Maybe something good came from our bad year, Emma observed. We learned how strong our family really is. Justice had been served, but more importantly, our family had survived and emerged stronger than before. Dorothy's attempt to destroy us had instead revealed the unbreakable bonds of love, trust, and commitment that defined our true family. 1 year after Dorothy's arrest and conviction, our family gathered around the kitchen table on a snowy December morning, preparing for a Christmas celebration that would be completely different from the traumatic holiday that had started our ordeal. Emma, now 11 years old and noticeably more confident, was helping me wrap presents while David prepared his famous pancakes for our Christmas morning breakfast. The legal aftermath of Dorothy's crimes had been thoroughly resolved. The federal investigation ultimately uncovered that she had defrauded 17 different families across 8 states over a 15-year period, stealing an estimated $300,000 through various property and identity fraud schemes. The restitution payments to our family had not only restored Emma's college fund, but had grown it significantly through court-ordered interest and penalties. Our house, fully returned to our ownership, had become a sanctuary of healing and growth, rather than the battleground it had been during Dorothy's residence. We'd renovated Dorothy's former bedroom into an art studio for Emma, who had discovered a talent for painting during her therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez. I like painting because I can make everything look the way it should look, Emma explained as she worked on a portrait of our family surrounded by bright yellow sunlight. In my paintings, everyone is smiling and safe. Dr. Martinez had been instrumental in Emma's emotional recovery. Through play therapy, art therapy, and family counseling sessions, Emma had learned to understand that Dorothy's treatment of her reflected Dorothy's character flaws, not Emma's worth as a person. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel supported and loved. Dr. Martinez had explained during one of our final therapy sessions, Emma's self-esteem has grown stronger because she experienced your unconditional commitment to protecting her. David's individual therapy had been equally transformative. Working with Dr. James Chen, he'd learned to recognize the manipulation tactics Dorothy had used throughout his childhood and understand how those experiences had shaped his tendency to avoid conflict at the expense of protecting his family. I spent 35 years trying to earn my mother's approval, David reflected during one of our evening conversations. I finally understand that her approval was never worth having. David's relationship with his siblings had also improved dramatically. Michael and Patricia had become our closest allies, and their support during the legal proceedings had strengthened family bonds that Dorothy's manipulation had strained for years. "We should have seen what Mom was doing to your family earlier," Michael had apologized repeatedly. "We let her convince us that the problems were normal family conflicts." "None of us understood the extent of her manipulation," I had reassured him. "The important thing is that we all protected each other once we recognized the truth." Beth had also visited from Arizona for the first time in 5 years, bringing her own family to meet Emma properly. The reunion had been emotional and healing for everyone involved. "I feel like I have my brother back, Zach," Beth had told me privately. "Dorothy kept us all separated and suspicious of each other. Now we can actually be a family again." My nursing career had flourished following Dorothy's conviction. Hospital administration had recognized that my handling of the crisis while maintaining professional standards demonstrated exceptional character and resilience. I'd been promoted to charge nurse of the cardiac unit and had become a mentor for other nurses dealing with personal challenges. "Your experience has helped other staff members recognize signs of domestic manipulation and financial abuse," Linda Martinez had explained during my performance review. "You've become an advocate for colleagues facing similar situations." Emma's relationship with her extended family had been carefully rebuilt through structured interactions and clear boundaries. She now enjoyed genuine relationships with her cousins, who had learned about the harmful effects of exclusion and favoritism through family discussions about Dorothy's behavior. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up when Grandma Dorothy was mean to you," her cousin Tyler had apologized during a family barbecue. "I didn't understand that it was wrong." "It's okay," Emma had replied with surprising maturity. "Sometimes grown-ups don't explain things right, and kids get confused about what's fair." The ripple effects of Dorothy's conviction had extended far beyond our family. Agent Collins had kept us updated on the other families who'd been helped by our case, including an elderly couple in Oregon who'd recovered their entire retirement savings, and a young mother in Texas who'd regained custody of her children after Dorothy's testimony revealed the scope of financial manipulation they'd endured. "Your family's courage to pursue federal charges prevented Dorothy from victimizing additional families," Agent Collins had explained. "She was actively researching potential targets when we arrested her." Emma's school performance had improved dramatically once the stress of Dorothy's presence was removed from her life. Her teacher, Mrs. Roberts, noted significant improvements in Emma's confident social interactions and academic achievement. "Emma has become a leader among her peers," Mrs. Roberts reported during parent conferences. "She helps other children who feel excluded and speaks up when she sees unfair treatment." As we prepared for Christmas morning, Emma surprised us with handmade gifts she'd created in secret. For David, she'd written a book titled "My Dad is a Hero" that described his decision to choose our family over his mother's manipulation. For me, she'd painted a beautiful portrait of the three of us, with the words "Chosen Family" written in careful script across the bottom. "I wanted to make presents that showed how much I love our family," Emma explained as we admired her artwork. "Store-bought presents are nice, but these show my feelings." The holiday season had brought reflection on how dramatically our lives had changed. The fear, anxiety, and financial stress that had dominated the previous year had been replaced by security, trust, and genuine happiness. "Do you ever miss having Grandma Dorothy around?" Emma asked thoughtfully as we arranged ornaments on our Christmas tree. David and I exchanged glances, considering how to answer honestly while age-appropriately. "I miss the grandmother I thought she was," David replied carefully. "But that person was pretending. The real Dorothy was someone who hurt people, and I don't miss that." "I miss the idea of having a nice grandma," Emma added, "but I don't miss being worried all the time." "You know what I've learned," I said, adjusting the star on top of our tree. "Family isn't about being related by blood. Family is about people who choose to love and protect each other every single day." Emma nodded seriously, "Like how you chose me when I was a baby, and how Daddy chose us over Grandma Dorothy when he had to pick." "Exactly," David confirmed. "And how you chose to come back home instead of running away permanently. We all choose each other every day." As Christmas morning progressed, we established new traditions that reflected our family's values of honesty, inclusion, and unconditional love. Emma opened presents with joy and gratitude, no longer comparing her gifts to those her cousins might receive, or wondering if she deserved them. The highlight of the morning came when Emma opened her final gift, an iPhone 16 Pro Max, the same model Dorothy had given to the other grandchildren the previous year. "But this one is special," David explained as Emma examined the phone with excitement. "What makes it special?" Emma asked. I handed her a handwritten card. "Read this." Emma opened the card and read aloud. "Dear Emma, this phone represents your place in our family. You have always been part of this family, and you always will be. You are chosen, wanted, and loved beyond measure. Love, Mom and Dad." Emma's eyes filled with happy tears as she hugged us both tightly. "This is better than getting a phone from Grandma Dorothy because this one comes with love instead of conditions." As our Christmas celebration continued, neighbors and friends dropped by to visit, creating the warm, welcoming atmosphere we'd always wanted for our home. Pastor Williams brought his family for dinner, continuing his efforts to make amends for initially doubting our reports about Dorothy's behavior. "Your family's experience taught our entire congregation about recognizing manipulation and supporting families in crisis," Pastor Williams said as we gathered around our dinner table. "You've helped create a community that's better at protecting vulnerable members." That evening, as we cleaned up from our celebration, Emma made an observation that perfectly captured our family's transformation. "You know what I figured out?" Emma said, carefully packing away Christmas decorations. "Last year, I thought I was the problem in our family. This year, I know I'm the best part of our family." "What changed your mind?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "You and Daddy showed me that real families protect each other," Emma replied simply. "When Grandma Dorothy tried to make me feel bad, you made sure I felt good. When she tried to make me feel left out, you made sure I felt included. That's what real families do." As we tucked Emma into bed that night, she shared one final thought that summarized the profound growth our family had experienced. "I used to think adoption meant I was someone's second choice," Emma said sleepily. "But Dr. Martinez helped me understand that adoption means I was someone's first choice. You could have chosen any baby in the world, but you chose me specifically." "And we choose you again every single day," David assured her, kissing her forehead. "We choose you in every universe and every lifetime," I added, pulling her blankets up to her chin. As David and I prepared for bed, we reflected on the journey that had brought our family to this point of healing and strength. "A year ago, I thought Dorothy might destroy our family," I admitted. "Instead, she showed us how strong our family really is." "She also showed Emma how much we love her," David replied. "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us reveal the best things about us." Looking toward the future, our family had plans and dreams that would have been impossible during the dark months of Dorothy's manipulation. Emma was excited about starting middle school with confidence and a strong sense of self-worth. David had applied for a promotion that would allow him more time with family while advancing his engineering career. I was considering returning to school for a master's degree in psychiatric nursing, inspired by our experience with mental health treatment. Most importantly, we'd learned that love, honesty, and commitment could overcome even the most determined attempts at manipulation and destruction. Dorothy had underestimated the power of authentic family bonds, and her defeat had strengthened those bonds beyond anything we'd previously imagined possible. As I fell asleep on Christmas night listening to the peaceful sounds of my family sleeping safely in our secure home, I felt profound gratitude for the difficult journey that had brought us to this place of joy and healing. Emma was right. She wasn't the problem in our family. She was and always had been the heart of our family. Have you ever experienced a family situation where someone tried to make you question your own worth or belonging? How did you handle it, and what helped you realize your true value? I'd love to hear your stories of resilience and family strength in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, Please like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories of triumph over adversity, and share this with someone who might need to hear that they're worthy of love and protection. Remember, chosen families, built on love and commitment, are often stronger than families bound only by blood. Thank you for listening to Emma's story, and I wish you and your chosen family peace, security, and unconditional love in the year ahead.